If available.
I'm Jeff. Welcome to Versus Live.
Why write poetry?
The poem is done. Like, what was the point here? I also don't know where this poem is going.
Poetry's very love-hate.
The worst possible thing is them just saying no.
Hello, everyone. I am Jeff.
I am Matthias.
You're Matthias. And then you are...
Violeta Orozco.
Yeah! Okay. Violeta, thank you so much for joining us today. You have some very, very exciting news. What is your news?
So I have a new book out. It's my second book.
Yeah.
And it's called Stillness in the Land of Speed.
And we're going to be talking all about that. By the way, don't sell yourself short. This is your second book in the span of how many months?
Yeah, the first one was April. So
That
yeah,
is wild. That is wild. Come on, 2 books in the span of like.
I write a lot.
It's like, and my third one is coming out next week.
Not for real.
But is there a third book coming already?
Yep.
Okay, hold up. So, what can you share about this third book? I know you have a second. We'll talk about the second book, but what can you share about the third one?
The third one is gonna come from a publisher in California called Nomadic Press, and it's called Songs Like Talismans.
Okay, that's great. Was that a contest, or was that just like an open submission?
Yeah, it was a contest, and it was really exciting because when I got the acceptance, my friends pushed me to submit to that one because I was like, that one's too competitive. I don't really feel comfortable submitting to them, and they were like, come on, just submit. You don't lose anything. And when I got the acceptance letter, it said your manuscript was selected out of 273 manuscripts in the United States, and I was like, oh my god.
I'm not even my grandmother's favorite grandchild.
That's like so wild to have that many public. Wait, was your second book also a contest?
Yep.
Wow. So then, like, how many contests would you say you submitted to in the last?
Damn. I would say at least 30. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty great. That is very, very wild. Hold up. Can you text me in the private chat? Sorry. Really quick, though, so people who are not familiar with you, I have this fun little description. Does this mention, by the way, give me 1 second. Does this mention your third book, or not just yet?
It does not.
It does not.
It should.
Wow. Rest, guys. This isn't even out yet. So, having submitted to so many contests and getting that's a very high acceptance rate.
Yeah.
What are your secrets? My God, how do you submit to a contest?
I want to share them all.
Yeah. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to not submit wildly, but rather pick the publishers that you think would be interested in your work, and that gives you like way higher chances of being accepted. So I would say one key thing is knowing the names of the judges for the contest, and not just knowing the names, but knowing who they are, what kind of poetry they like, what kind of poetry they write, and really knowing their work and what they're about. So for example, one big rule I have is, as a poet of color, I usually submit to contests that acknowledge that they're, accepting work, or not only accepting work from writers of color, but that really are centering voices of color. So that's like my first filter. And I think that also like is consistent with my politics. So it's all about knowing who's your audience, right? Who you're writing for, and having knowledge of the people that are interested in the same themes.
Mm-hmm. So when you're actually creating the work, or when you're like compiling the work, is that something that goes into that process too, or does you only really consider that once the product is complete and now you're able to be like, okay, where do I send my child?
Yeah, I think so. I think something important is like not to censor yourself when you're writing. So I had, for example, I was working in a collection. I actually haven't kept on at it, but it was
Why have
poems.
you not? I mean, this could it could be your fourth.
I have, and you just reminded me of it. It was like in the completely like in the cemetery because it was a very angry book. It was full of like poetry rants. It was like poetic rants or like poem rants.
Please tell me that's the title.
It should have been, but in the end, I thought, okay, this is a this is like a collection that I'm gonna let sit there for a while and let it cool down, and then I'll work on it. I'll keep on editing it. But I think at first it's like really creating the book as like an aesthetic product, like as a finished product in its own. So for me, it takes time to like sort of like design the book as a whole, like as a thematic whole. And once I have that, then I start submitting to publishers. But I need at least like 70 pages ready to feel like I'm ready, so it's more than just like doing an anthology of like the poems you wrote that year. It's more like looking for common themes and thematic strands, and mostly.
How often would you say that you write?
So now I'm writing more. I used to write about, I had like 3 poetry workshops like last semester. It was way too much, so I couldn't keep up the pace. So I was like kind of burnt out. So I only have like I have 2 workshops this semester. One in school, one with like friends of mine that we kind of built it, and also on my own, like outside the poetry workshops, I'm also writing. So right now I'm writing almost every day, but this is as of like January. Like last year I didn't write every day. It was like 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what's kind of brought about that change?
So here's a secret I'm writing.
Oh my gosh, so many secrets. We're learning so many secrets today.
I'm actually writing dabbling into fiction right now, so that like forces me to write more. Yeah.
I thought she was gonna say like I'm on the poem enhancing drugs. Like
No.
Found the secrets, meth.
Like what is that? But that's really cool. I think one of the things that I really admire that somebody that can really create something really unique, like consistently, because I think a lot of people when they're thinking about, I think about putting together a collection just like the one and being like, man, that's a really daunting task. And you're like, yeah, like this is like the first one, but then there's like, this is the second one. And then like the third one is coming. And like, if we did this interview, like this time next year, it'd be like, oh yeah, and I have this movie coming out too. So it's like, who the heck knows like how much production you could really put together, but it's really admirable seeing that not only did you create that first body of work, but you're like, what's the next thing that I can do, and you're like, you're already
hungry.
here.
Yeah, staying hungry. That's great.
Yeah.
No.
For sure.
How much can I ask you, like, just to give people who have maybe never submitted to contests before, what's kind of your budget for submitting the contests? I mean, these things aren't necessarily cheap.
No, yeah, that's important. Basically, I kind of do it bi-monthly. So let's say I submit in applying to residencies and contests about at least $40 per month, because each contest is like $20 and each residency is like $20.
Right.
So if I only do that, it's like $40.
Yeah.
But there's also other things that I try to apply to, like contests. Did I already say contest manuscripts, residencies, and individual poems in magazines?
Yeah.
So I would say at least like $50 per month, if not more. That's like the minimum, I would say.
Yeah.
Do you kind of go into the year with a goal of how much that you want to submit or what else you want to do? Or are you just like, this year I'm just going to do as much as possible?
I did that last year and ended up pretty burnt out, so I don't do that anymore. Because it can take up a lot of your time simply submitting, and it's not necessary. Once your book is accepted, then okay, maybe you can slow. I slow down after my books are accepted. So last year I was like, yeah, until somebody accepts it,
very
I'm just gonna
slow
throw it
now.
at people.
Very, very slow.
Very aggressively. But then I was like, okay, now I have 2 books in my hands, and it's a lot of work simply to promote one. And I ended up a little bit burnt out after my book tours this December. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna slow down and just concentrate on carving up more time. So I'm submitting to more residencies right now to like carve more time for writing. And I'm happy just submitting my cap. I would say my strategy is aiming for submitting at least 2 contest and 1 residency per month. And I'm happy if I manage to do just 2 to 3 submissions per month.
So let's talk about this second collection. So this was from a contest as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the specific contest that this was?
Yeah. This one was from Jakar Press. They're a press in North Carolina, and here's a little like logo. They are. I really like what they do. They're a community-oriented press, so they have an annual gathering, which is how I met them in the first place. I think Ohio Poetry Association like posted something about that, and that's how I found out about them. And they had like these amazing workshops with Carolyn Fortier. Who else was there? This year we had the Diane Zeus, Jackie Shelton Green, who ended up the contest, but I didn't know it was a blind contest, so she didn't know this was my collection. But I took a workshop with her with the current North Carolina Poet Laureate, and I was just so enthralled by this event because they were featuring poetry of witness, writers of color, marginalized communities. It's a really activist press, and I think I took another workshop with them in September, and that's when the editor encouraged us to submit. He said, "Oh, by the way, this contest closes in Halloween, so I really like your work." And the first thing I learned that I want to share with everybody from a publisher is when a publisher tells you, "I like your work," that means submit right now. Like, you cannot miss that opportunity. It's a sin to like miss that opportunity if they're telling you submit. So, there was already indication that they had interest in my work. And although it was a blind contest and the editor wasn't the judge of the contest, it still means you're in the right place. So I had no Halloween that day. It was like a sacrifice I had to make because the deadline was literally midnight at Halloween. And I was like, all right, I'm almost there. I'll push through and then, go grab a drink or something. In the end, everybody was like asleep by the time I ended. So I was kind of like sad. Oh no. But I could hear people outside my window just partying and like guffawing. And I was like working. And I was like, I don't care. I'm doing something more important,
They were guffawing?
There is no guffawing here. We're working. We work here.
Like, no
guffawing for me.
I will guffaw later.
Yeah.
But it paid off.
It's a sacrifice. Yeah.
So what was your reaction to the opportunity or to you actually being published?
I have to promote again? Oh my God.
I think the thing that I was most moved about was Jackie Shelton Green was, and I didn't know, but when they gave me the news, I thought this is the first time.
Oh no. the first time live on that cliffhanger. Come on.
Centered publisher
Um,
recognizes my work, and Jackie Shelton Green is the first Black North Carolina poet laureate, which I was surprised about. I was like, what do you mean the first? I don't get it. North Carolina's in the South. That doesn't make any sense. That's ridiculous in 2021. So for me, it was just such a huge validation because it didn't come from somebody within the Latino or the Chicano or the Mexican community, right? It came from another writer of color that was just this fierce activist. She came to the Freedom Museum here in Cincinnati and gave this, just like all these poems dedicated to the Civil War. And seeing her in action, it's like watching a force of nature walk right in and be like, here, I'm going to tell you what this is about. And people just listen, like a bunch of, it was really interesting because the Cincinnati Symphonic Orchestra commissioned her a piece for, it was basically like an opera, and it was called Black Being. It was about the transatlantic slave trade, and she, just seeing her as the author of that magnum opus and being lauded and applauded by the whole city, by two combined orchestras, it was just insane for me. So I was just like so honored that I could be in that way, mentored by her and like seen by her. And she was like, she came to Cincinnati like two months after she'd selected my manuscript and said, "Oh, I want to meet you." And she was like showing me off to like the people at the orchestra. And I felt so special because I thought, wow, like, these are the communities that I want to engage with. Like, these are my people. These are the people that are right for. I know my audience, and just, it felt so very validating,
It's so cool. So you're based out of Cincinnati right now?
No, I'm in Cincinnati, yeah.
Oh,
but
okay.
she is in North Carolina. She's in Durham. So she came coincidentally because she had this commissioned piece that she'd been working on for a year. And she said, by the way, I was invited by the Chicago Orchestra and the Cincinnati Orchestra for my piece, so I would love to meet you. And I was like, you're coming over, I'm gonna meet you in person, and it was just so beautiful meeting her, meeting your judge in person, right? Your poetry judge in person, because then it becomes a relationship. And I see editing and publishing.
Give her a second. That is really cool though, to meet your judges. It's not something I've had an opportunity to do a whole lot, but
I just assume people are judging me at all times.
And you meet them all. I think it's also interesting too, that just the amount of contests that she says she applied to, because that's again something that, like when Dahimba Jess got his book, was it Olio published, he was like, this is going to be out to 30 publications all at the same time. And I think that that's something that, even for like, these high people, well-known poets and things like that, it's still the grind aspect of it. I mean, you can hire, it wasn't just him doing it, right? Because he had like his publisher, and you can hire assistants and things like that to like send it out, but you still have to send it out. It's not like you're up there and it's easy.
Yeah, you got to pound the pavement. And a lot of times there is this like apprehension of people to like, once they get done with the product, they don't want to, do the next step, which is like really kind of putting it in front of the people that, would need to see it in order to kind of get it places. And so it's, just the thought of, man, like once you're done with this collection, like now I have to really show up for my work. You know what I mean? I have to really show up for this thing that I really want the world to see. So it's really cool to see that process in action. You know what I mean? And that process working.
And I imagine it actually kind of makes it to have so many collections coming out at the same time. Like in some ways, I think it's an advantage, but then on the other hand, it's also like, oh my gosh, like it's like how do you
It's just like you don't know what you're doing for this event, and be like, oh yeah, for this event, this is my like no, this for the second. Oh yeah, you're right.
But it's that, but it's also like, like so you have your one publisher and then your other publisher. Like, how do you not kind of like cannibalize? Like because people come in, they may not buy both collections, so it's like. Obviously from a poet's perspective, it's cool, but like from a publisher's perspective, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, but granted, I mean, a lot of it also comes just like from like pre-sales and stuff, but a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I would like to have that. I also think that, I mean, even just the promotion aspect, because I feel like when you make a collection, you're kind of thinking about the collection itself, but you're not necessarily thinking about, your collection reaches the success you want. How do you then do the promotion? I feel like poets aren't as interested in the promotion aspect. Maybe Violetta can kind of shed some light on that. Hi
there.
Hey, can you hear us? Check 1 2 1 2.
I am going to connect from my cell phone if that works.
That's fine.
I think that will be more reliable.
Okay. So I'll give it a chance to reconnect that way. Ooh, got some weird angles there. There we go. It's better. Because I think, again, like I feel like a lot of writers are so focused on the writing. But then you get the workout. And that's kind of when it's a whole different skill set, but that's when the real work begins if you want to have like success.
Yeah.
Taking a moment to check on Violetta. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Nothing. We'll give her another moment to see if that connection gets a little bit better. But again, what we're doing right now, guys, is we are talking to Violetta Orozco, who has a second collection out. Okay. She's, again, her first book already won all kinds of awards. Her second book won an award as well. She's talking about her second book, which is
Stillness in the Land of Speed.
Stillness in the Land of Speed. I'm just going to pull up a link again just so you guys can kind of see what this looks like. Give me 1 second. Separate the right tabs at the right times. But this is a new collection which she's actually going to be sharing with us in Columbus here at Third Way Cafe. We also want to thank Third Way Cafe for hosting us as always for the podcast. But this is a Brave tab. Why doesn't that open up on the right tab? Give me 1 second. I just want to show you guys this collection is coming out soon.
Yeah, and if you're in the city, if you're in Columbus, or even if you're not in Columbus and you think, hey, driving to Columbus is the thing I should do, you should absolutely a collection. So it's up for pre-order right now. So you can go directly over to the Jakar Press website, jakarpress.com/stillness dash in dash dash
there it is. Look at that
dash speed. There it is.
Violetta, who did your cover, by the way? If you can hear us, who did your cover? Check 1 2 1 2.
Can you hear us?
Violetta, can you hear us? Nada. I think it's also frozen on her end too. But again, this is the book. Gotten all kinds of praise and awards and things like that. Given by the poet that she was speaking about. Poet laureate of North Carolina, she said. Jackie Shelton Green.
Correct.
Hey, we're back.
Hey, we're back.
Hi.
Yeah.
Can you hear us okay?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm back. Sorry about that.
No worries. These things happen. I was wondering who did the cover art for your book?
I think it was the designer. Should be here. Daniel Krawiec, who is the designer.
Okay. Did you have much input? I know, like in your last book that when we did your interview, we talked about you had that relationship with the artist and things like that. Was it the same this time around, or not so much?
Not so much. I think they suggested a book cover, and I said that if they wanted, I could also reach out to local artists in Mexico City. But they thought, they thought they wanted to go that with an image that was more like a photograph rather than art. And I thought that was fine. What did strike me as unconventional was if you look at the book cover, the photo is actually flipped because it's a mountain, right? So it's supposed to be like, this is the regular orientation, right?
Ah, that-
But they wanted to switch the orientations of my name here, so it has a vertical
Gotcha.
orientation, and then so there were three different and kind of disconcerting directions that the letters were pointing at and the picture. And when I asked them about it, they said, well, if we put it, if we put your name like next to the title in the same direction, it has a more conventional feel, and we don't see your work as conventional. So that's what we wanted to express. And I said, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I don't see it as conventional here.
Appreciate your reasoning. Okay.
Okay.
So
Well,
they
one of
kind
the
of
things.
talked me into that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to bring up is actually because we actually, my wife and I, we've actually been going to Cincinnati a lot over the past, I would say, like year or so. She was just the poet in residence for the Taft Museum, and
Nice.
yeah. In Cincinnati, and that was like my first time really kind of being like kind of introduced to the city. I've done a couple shows there here and there, but I've never really spent some real time there. And in spending time in Cincinnati, I was like, this is it. It might be Ohio's most beautiful city. Like it might be. Do you get a lot of inspiration just from being there? Because it's just such a scenic area, and your arts community is amazing. So, what are your experiences there, or do you get a lot of inspiration from Cincinnati?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just feel really thankful that it took me actually a long time to find my community, like a year and a half. Because although I am in a program that is focused on creative writing, I think I've always really what I most enjoy is really working with community poets rather than academic poets. And I don't really identify with that scene, with the academic scene. Although I am in it, but I see myself primarily as a writer and a writer for the people. So when I finally met the community poets, which are mostly Black poets, I just like suddenly started focusing on my craft in a way that I hadn't, and specifically my stagecraft, because most of them are slam poets and really devoted, religiously devoted to the craft, to the point that we have this group chat, and one of them, Nate, he's always saying like, I got up at 5 a.m. and memorized the poem, and tomorrow I'm going to Detroit to this slam, and it's gonna be on the weekend. He's been like hitting a new state every week. He just won he split the first place in Knoxville, and it's so inspiring really to have that community so motivated, always like doing all these fundraising events. We did one on gun violence like last week, and it was amazing. It was just so moving, and like seeing the basically like witnesses of state violence, right? And so when I found them, I was like, this is what I came for. Sure, I came for the creative writing program too, but I also came to find them here, to find my people here, my writers here.
Are you familiar with Ye Lee?
Yes.
We did.
Oh, yes.
Oh
I
my
love
god.
Bailey's work. Yes.
Yeah, we so when we met when my wife did like the Taft residency, and like I went to a workshop that she ran, and I remember thinking to myself like, well, first of all, you have an amazing community of just writers in general. I think that we were able to meet like so many like really, really cool poets. But yeah, Yaley was one of those people. I was like listening to Yaley's work and thinking this is like this is like a different. It feels like if you were to like drop it into like a machine, like mess up the machine, like that's how like different. Just like listening to like how she like orients the English language, right?
Yes.
And yeah, she was a really cool person to meet. We went to CC's Pizza, and I don't know if that's a special thing to you, but it's a special thing to me that Cincinnati has that Columbus doesn't. But yeah, no, it's really so cool to be able to meet like another person that's in Cincinnati. We love the city.
That's awesome. It's a lovely city. Yes, and the people.
How would you say your program is? So I mean, you're in the program. You have all these successes going on. Is your program helping you like promote the stuff? Are they like take advantage of this opportunity or not so much?
I mean, so I kind of built the particular like study track I'm in. I kind of built it with the help of my advisor because I'm in the Romance languages department, and I'm both like a teaching assistant and a graduate student, a PhD student. But since the creative writing program in Spanish doesn't have a lot of creative writing classes. It's mostly like, like literature, like Spanish literature classes. And so what I did was I kind of combined, I asked my advisor before coming in, would you guys let me take half my classes in the English department with the people in the PhD and the creative writing program and half in the Romance languages department? And so the deal I struck with them really like was the one that made me pick Cincinnati over other places that I'd gotten accepted, because they said, yeah, sure, you can definitely do that. And so I'm taking like I take like a workshop every semester at least, and I also take like my mandatory classes. So the English department, the Spanish department has been really flexible with like allowing me to do this kind of like dual track, and the English department has also been like so supportive. And I really feel, although technically I'm not in that same program, I really feel like a part of it. And just the workshops I've taken with everybody are amazing. It's different than, the features I do with the community poets. It's like two different worlds, but I love sort of like blending them together and connecting the two worlds, which seems so dissociated. For example, in the English department, in the creative writing program, I would say most of the poets are experimental poets, and I'm more like a narrative poet. And so for me, I learned a lot about like experimental poetry like last semester, in my like forms and poetry class, and really learned the deep technical stuff and like the intricate poets, like Gertrude Stein and poets that don't write like me at all, right? So I have been like incredibly enriched by those workshops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you see yourself having a collection coming out in Spanish in the future?
Oh, I actually... You're gonna make fun of me and all my books. You're gonna make fun of me.
In 2 weeks, Jeff, you didn't hear my
what
my
did you win
collection that's coming out.
What did you win?
There's another book. Yeah, I write a lot.
So you have 4 books coming out in a less than 12 months.
And it already came out in Mexico City.
All right. You win.
Okay. I've written one poem in the past 3 weeks, so maybe this. Okay. All right. Clearly,
this put us in my free time. Yeah, so
we all
I
need
published,
to work this hard. We all need to work much harder than we're working. Yeah, it's very clear to me.
I think I think, it was kind of a feverish year for me because I didn't plan to publish that book at that moment because I was so up to the brim in work. But that one was kind of like a publisher in Mexico reached out to me in Mexico City, and she was familiar with my work mostly through I published like one essay in like the National Universities magazine, and it was a travel essay about, I was living in the East Coast at that time, about like COVID in New Jersey and New York, and she really loved the essay. She was like, oh my God, that essay, it's amazing. Do you have by any chance more essays so that we could publish like a collection of essays? And I was like, oh my God, let me see, like, let me look into my drawers, see how many essays I can like pull out, And so I had been writing like feverishly at the onset of the pandemic, particularly essays, because I felt like in the essay form, each genre like gives me certain liberties I can't take, for example, in poetry. So I talked a lot about my trips, my trips to New Orleans, to the East Coast, to California, to back to Mexico, back and forth to Mexico. So in the end, I ended up getting a 90-page essay book, travel essay book. But it was a lot of work. I was working on Thanksgiving. I had no Thanksgiving. I was like, all right, that's fine.
Just knocking off all the holidays.
Like, no Halloween, no Thanksgiving.
No guffawing on Halloween, no guffawing on Thanksgiving. It's just...
So yeah, that one's in Spanish. Yeah.
How are you planning? So, I mean, you did it. I know you were doing a tour like out in California, things like that. Is Mexico also becoming like a promotion destination, or you're focusing more on just the U.S. primarily?
Well, I'm focusing more on the U.S. because, like I haven't built, I was a writer for 10 years in Mexico, and in 10 years I didn't build an audience. You know what I mean? So here I managed to build an audience in at least, I would say, 3 to 5 years. I had already built a way bigger audience than I ever managed to build in my own home country. So, I tried, and I'm still trying to have a bigger readership there. And I hope that with this new collection of essays, I will. But definitely my work has paid off harder here, and my audience has been steadily growing here. But yeah, I'm definitely going to promote that book when I go to Mexico this summer and tour as much as I can. But yeah, for sure, that's the plan too.
How's that affected you? Like, like you have your country of birth, and you were there for so long, and like, and you're not able to establish the community, or like for whatever reason it just didn't work out. Versus you go to a new country, and then you're able to, like, I imagine that kind of leads to some kind of difficult feelings. It's like, man, like, what happened? Like what? Like, would you say that, like, what's kind of your explanation for what happened?
I mean, I think at this point I really figured out the publishing industry in Mexico, like understood it better with the hindsight of having figured out at least the poetry publishing industry in the US. So I understand so many things were particular to the industry, not to me as an individual, right? And I think it's an error to like look at yourself as a writer in the without taking into account the pressures, let's call it the societal pressures that are behind you producing a work of art. So, for example, something that is very true in Mexico City, as true as it is in New York, in like any big city in the world, is it's so competitive that it's incredibly hard to get noticed if you're one out of many, right? So that contributed to me not really being recognized in Mexico City, because there's so many writers everywhere, artists everywhere, right? As far as the eye can see, and they're all good, right? But for example, we do I would say we do more things with less budget because, you know, we still manage to like, for example, publishing houses in Mexico have way less of a budget, but they still really have really good networks. For example, independent publishers are really good at like, and fanzines are really good at like promoting their work through other independent publishers. And that is like one of our biggest strengths in Mexico. We have people, like people are really the resource, right? And so I think once I understood that, I thought, oh, okay, it's not that, you know, it wasn't my fault that I didn't get noticed in all those years. It was just an incredibly complicated scene, right? And I think the more I learn about it, the better I understand it. But with time, you know, I think when you're younger in your 20s, like, you know, you're like so desperate to be noticed that if there's a critical age at which you need to be noticed, which for me is like in your 20s, you know, if after that you kind of, many of my friends in Mexico that I've talked to, like now that we're all like in our early 30s, and I'm like, they've told me, oh no, I stopped writing because what's the point? Like, you know, I haven't published my first book. And it was really intense. That conversation was really, really sad for me because I was like, dude, come on, you and I won the first scholarship ever to like Acapulco to like, you know, just write poetry and like drink beer, and you're telling me that you just completely renounced to your vocation as a writer. He was like, yeah, I mean, I just don't want to be like, you know, to feel like I failed. So I've noticed that, you know, that is, I feel like really grateful that that I think I was almost at the moment I did like there was a point in my career when I was like, I'm just tired of having been a writer my whole life since I was a little kid, always trying to publish and not being published. I published like my first book at 30. Like, what the fuck? And I'd been writing all my life, you know what I mean? So I was, when that book came out, and this was a book in Spanish that I never talked about. It's actually my actual first book.
It's like brand new books just keep like popping up. And I have a secret first book that I published when I was born.
Spanish, and then the Woman Diaries is my first name. But like when that book came out, I was like, I'd even almost given up on being a writer. You know, I like when it came out, I was like, seriously, I was like waiting for that book for 3 years until I gave up, and now you're like, actually, we are going to publish it. So, you know, it came out in like really bad conditions. I was pretty disillusioned when it came out. It came out in Mexico City, but it was only like $50 because the publishing house was broke, and they were like, your book is going to be the last one we publish. And I was like, what? Why do you even publish it then? There's 50 copies? Who's that for? My family and friends? Like 50, and it's like 60 pages. It's a little chapbook, 60 pages. Like, who wants that? Who's going to read that? You know, so sad. So it was hard. Like, now looking in hindsight, it seems like, man, I'm glad it came out because I was so damn tired from trying to compete and just feeling like nobody, right? And that everything I wrote was meaningless and nobody could read it. But my first book in the US won the Latino Book Award. I was like, okay, so this is it. This is the place where my writing belongs to. Clearly, the signs are there. I just was reading them wrong. You know, it's not that Mexico wasn't the place. It's just that my audience was primarily here.
I feel like that that mentality really translates into the production, like the consistency. Because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, now that I'm
Now,
here, now that I
right,
know, I figured it out.
right.
Oh, we're working now. It's like
Oh yeah.
my 7th book is coming out next Friday because I figured it out.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah, I
cool.
think that's why I write so much, because it took me a really long time to get here.
I want to talk a little bit about you mentioned a lot about just like finding community and things like that. If a poet is like watching this and they're like, man, I enjoy writing, I write, but I don't feel like I have that. What would be like your big suggestions to them in order to start kind of building those people around you that offer that sort of support?
Open mics, definitely. That's like my first suggestion. And that reminds me that like my first community I built here in the US was in Athens, Ohio, which is like an hour and a half away from you guys.
Athens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
And as small as that city is, you know, especially for me coming from Mexico City, that I was like, damn, will I be able to find community here in this like 13,000 people town? Like, how, where? And I was, because I started going to the open mics. I think there was only 1 or 2, but they had a lot of events, because at the time Carrie Gunter Seymour was actually the Athens Poet Laureate, so she was always organizing events, and I ended up organizing a bunch of events with her on the last year when she was Poet Laureate, and with another friend of mine. So we really got to build a huge network, because we were trying to also bring people from Columbus. We brought Chuck Salmons there. That's how I met him, like when I was doing my master's there. And I was just like, every opportunity I got to go to, every poster I saw that said open mic night, poetry event, poetry and music, I was there, so I did the work, and the work was going to where the people were finding out where the people were, and like showing up every week. That consistency for me is key.
So I guess 2 questions. Did you ever meet Anita and Norman? We met them at an open mic. Like, this was years ago. I met them at open mic years ago. But Anita and Norman, they run an open mic, but I can't remember, or they ran an open mic. I don't know if they still do. This was like years ago. I don't know if you're in community with them at all in Athens.
I don't know them. Yeah, do you remember which was the venue where they ran this open mic at?
I don't know. Like, I went there literally 1 time for the show.
Oh,
I've been to
okay.
Athens twice, but I went to the show because one of the people that go to, like, that I travel with here had the show.
Yeah, I don't know them. I don't know them, but like, I remember the venues where they used to have, I don't know if they still have them at the same places, but for example, I would figure out like what the venues were for poetry. One of them was like Arts West, and some bars that also
it was
did
at a
that.
bar for sure.
Right.
They were definitely drinking.
Oh yeah, Athens, yeah. They do over there.
Okay, but also, so what's the open mic situation like right now in Cincinnati?
Oof, it's burning. It's good. It's freaking good. Oh yeah. I mean, I tell you, I'm learning every week, because these people, like the open mic goers in Cincinnati, it's like a very tightly knit community. So I'm getting to know slowly like the open mics in the area. And for example, there's but they're very supportive of each other. So we have, for example, if there's, the main one I go to is in Somerset, and that's where I met like most of the poets that I am community with. And so, for example, if somebody saw my open mic, liked my performance there, they would invite me to this other open mic called Nostalgia, which is like a jazz bar, and it's amazing. because you have like professional jazz musicians if you want to use them, just in case you want to. There's another jazz bar that also has poetry nights on Wednesdays that I haven't gone to, but they also have a piano there and musicians. And so there's always like new opportunities opening up in venues I've never heard of. And I'm always like, God damn, if I wasn't in grad school, I'd go to an open mic like almost every day. There's so many, and I haven't finished with, just getting to know them. It's crazy.
Yeah, we definitely have to connect, because every time we're in Cincinnati, like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like the one thing we love to like go to an open mic. We went to
Oh,
one
yeah.
that's at this. It's inside of a pizza shop.
I don't know that one. See, even you are teaching me about new open mics. This is crazy. My own city, current city.
Yeah, I've been to 2 in the city, but then also, there's like slams. Like have you ever been to the Cincinnati Poetry Slam Doo-Wop hosted?
Doo-Wop, yes. I actually, and this is why the mentality must be always like, I'm going. I don't care if it's a competition. I didn't go to the October one, although everybody invited me, because I was like, no, I don't want to compete. I like these people. These people are my buddies. And they were like, what the fuck? You didn't show up. Where were you? And I was like, well, I was, shy. And they were like,
don't win their prizes on their own.
We're here to compete. Like, we're not, yeah, sure, we're friends, but we're friends who compete. And I was like, you're right. And I felt so silly that after that, Doo-Wop organizes a lot of events. So there's like 2 main, there's Doo-Wop, and then there's Mo Poetry Phillips, who also organizes, hers is called Regal Rhythms, and she organizes a bunch of events. She organized the gun violence memorial, John Crawford it was called. And then there's also, so they're like the big organizers in the city, those 2 women. And there's also right, the hip hop school, Elements. I don't know if you know about this one. I just found out about this school through the Poets too, but some of them work for it, and they have this crazy program. I was a judge in a slam last week. It was called Echo Youth Poetry Slam. Doo-Wop invited me to be a judge, and I had no idea that they have a coach. 3 high schools in Cincinnati have a poetry coach. So they get to prepare their kids for this annual contest. And it was just insane. It was so good. I was like really impressed at the level of like 16, 17-year-old kids. I was like, wow. This is that school, Elements, just seemed like very revolutionary, I was like just really impressed at their precociousness. They had such a strong voice. It's hard to develop a voice. You take years to develop a voice, and they just had such clarity and such strength, that I really I think Cincinnati's definitely a leader for that, for like spoken word. And I want to find out more about the hip hop school, because I know at least a couple of my poet friends are instructors there for high schoolers.
Yeah, it's a really they clearly put a lot of the resources into it, especially the youth. We went to this rec center that they're building up, and I can't remember what the rec center is called. I really should have had that information ready, but we went to this rec center where they essentially hold like the child the programs for the youth, and we did this workshop. And again, just like your experience when you're listening to these kids, that you're like, where, if I was that age doing that, if I had that kind of clarity, that kind of determination, that kind of just like I think at most of their ages, I was like just really confused, just doing whatever kind of came to me. And it's very clear that they have a lot of drive and a lot of passion. And just being able to be like, okay, these kids are good. They're good. They're going to be just great.
That impulse is so important. Like when you're to get that kind of support when you're young is so key, that just looking at them, I also thought about my former self, and I just remembered how hard it was when I started, because that was about the age I started like reading my poetry out loud in public for like slam events in Mexico City. I was like 16 or 17, and I just remember the stage. It took me 10 years to like overcome stage fright. Straight up 10 years, you know, with a coach, it probably would have taken me less, but it's amazing that they have those opportunities here.
It's also really cool that they can have people, you know, like you, not only, you know, just be able to see your product, but also be able to see you in community. Because I think a lot of times you think about writers, you think about people that are really publishing and really putting out work, and you think about like a lack of access to the actual person. And so you actually being in the community, being able to be like, well, hey, here's some practical ways that you can go from point A to point B and actually have, you know, works of art to show for it. You know, I think that's you know, it's a really cool thing to be able to have in your midst, and for you to really be doing the work in the community is really cool.
Yeah, totally agree.
Guys, I know that just looking at time,
well, are we looking at linear time or
going back 5 years?
So when your first book was really published.
Yeah. I got a story of my life. Trying to publish one book.
So again, just to highlight something that's coming up. So you're going to be joining us in Columbus very, very soon.
In the place that we're at right now.
In fact, here. Yeah,
we're
at this very venue. Like,
yay!
Yeah. So,
see, now if time was cyclical, we would be in the same place right now because it's overlapping structure.
This is
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Until that happens, or until we experience time in that way,
we're already experiencing
you're
time
going
that way because it's cyclical.
But better.
But Friday, Friday 27th at 7:30. You and Hussain. Am I pronouncing his name right?
Yeah, Hussain.
Okay, cool. Just make sure you guys will be joining us for a night of poetry. You guys are bringing your respective collections. He's also a very accomplished poet as well in Cincinnati. We're going to be here again at Third Way Cafe. Thanks again to Tim for hosting us.
Thank you, Tim.
And
thanks, Tim.
You guys are going to be sharing your work. Anything that we should know before you guys arrive? Well,
I just want to thank you, Jeff, and both of you and Diversus for not only for an opportunity to share my work, but to really, my goal is also to help promote voices of color and people with like less access to these resources. So yeah, I'm just appreciative of this space, and hopefully, and here's what I told Hussain, I thought, hey, let's reach out to the Columbus poets. You know, my goal is also to build a little bridge between Columbus and Cincinnati, and hopefully, you know, bring some poets from Columbus here to Cincinnati to feature with us, and vice versa. Just keep that channel open, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great, because it's not, to my knowledge, not really happening.
Right.
Like, hardcore.
And we're not that far. I mean, I know that my people travel all the way to Louisville. We went to a slam contest in Louisville like a month ago, and you know, it was 2 hours away, and it's not as big as Columbus, you know what I mean? So I know many people would be willing to travel to Columbus if they're featured. I know a bunch of people that are looking actively to be featured outside Cincinnati. So yes, I'm excited for this potential collaboration as well.
Yeah.
Let's get that going.
Let's go.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah, we definitely got some stuff. Yeah, we'll keep in contact. We definitely got some stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So once again, guys, this has been Violetta. Violetta, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, however many books.
However, all the books that you have. That entire bookshelf that's behind you. You wrote that on the wait to get online. You just were like, I might as well crank out.
thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you very, very soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye bye.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.